Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the REDX podcast. We apologize for the late start today. We were having some technical difficulties, but we figured it out. We got Joe Rosen here. He is one of our favorite guests. We have him on every few months. I wish it were more often, to be honest, Joe, but he always brings the knowledge. He always brings the expertise, and we always get super tactical with Joe. So I'm super excited to have him here. Joe, how are you doing today, my man?
I'm doing awesome, man. It's hotter than hell here. I'm in South Florida. What's the weather like up there?
Let's see. We're in Salt Lake, and it is also hot, but we don't have the humidity, so I'm sure you're dying compared to
I'm
us.
jealous. I do have a pool, so it kind of
Well,
evens itself out, you know?
Okay. Yeah, and we can't swim in our lake, so it's
That's
good.
true.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today, Joe. We're super excited to have you. As always, just a few bits for our audience. If you're joining us live, please chime in. Say hi. Let us know where you're from. We've got Tim from Vancouver. We've got Amanda. She watches every week from Texas.
Awesome.
A lot of great return guests. Ooh, we got Ada from Naples, Florida, a Florida local there for you, Joe.
Yeah, close.
So yeah, we're going to be bringing the heat. Remember to like and subscribe, all the good stuff. Remember to join us every week. Today, I'm super excited because we're going to be jumping in with Joe and talking about super practical advice on things like tracking your numbers, things like the value of a single cold call, right? Things like how you can just close more deals from prospecting. And we'll just, we'll let Joe bring the expert advice here. But let's jump right in, Joe, with kind of this first topic here. Tracking your numbers, right? I think everyone knows they need to track their numbers.
Yep.
Let's even assume that most agents do track their numbers to some extent or some degree. What advice do you have on how to track those numbers more effectively? And even more importantly, how to use those numbers you track to actually improve your business, right?
Sure. So, I could do an hour just on this. So I'm going to try to condense this, but I'll tell you there's three different suggestions I would give you on the how, right? Sisu is wonderful. SISU. I forget if it's .com or whatever it is, but if you Google that, you'll find it, right? Beautiful company, probably the best there is when it comes to tracking. And they've got a great interface. They're beautiful. They're a little bit more expensive, but they're beautiful. If you've got a team, I think it's a phenomenal option for you. We use CTE. Just the letter CTE. It's cheaper. It's an Excel spreadsheet that's locked, and there's a nerd behind the screen, and he's doing a bunch of stuff for us. And it's all of its effort to get it up and going. But once you've got it, man, you can track your numbers every single day. Or if you don't want to do any of that, you can do an Excel spreadsheet. But you have to track your numbers. I'm a huge fan of Shark Tank. You watch Shark Tank?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I love it because it takes a lot of different entrepreneurs with all different types of mindsets and experience and levels of expertise, and it puts them in front of studs, people who've done it. And one of the things that I consistently hear, and I share this with my agents all the time, is they'll tell you they'd rather you have an average idea and you know your numbers like the back of your hand than you've got a phenomenal idea but you don't know your numbers, right? Because that is what makes a professional business person. That's what makes a true entrepreneur who's likely going to be successful. If you know your numbers, it's really easy to say, like right now, I know with the method of prospecting we do, from memory, it's 700 and something, but I think it's 708. It takes us 708 dials to get a closing on average. Wow. Now, because of the way we prospect, a lot of that is cold calling. Some of that is expireds. Some of that is our sphere of influence. Now, obviously, with your sphere, it's going to take you less calls to get a closing. With cold calls, it's going to take you more calls to get a closing. But your sphere is limited. Cold calls are not limited, right? We also had this discussion. There's somebody on my team who wanted to do open houses. And I said, let's talk about open houses and let's compare it to REDX, right?
Right.
She doesn't like doing cold calls. And I said, okay, I got it. And cold calls are probably your weakest lead. All right. So let's take all that into consideration and let's beat on cold calls. You got an open house. It takes you maybe an hour to prepare for that open house. Okay. You're doing very minimal stuff. I think you should do a lot more, but let's say you're doing minimal work. You're getting the flyers put together. You're putting it on the MLS. All that stuff takes you an hour. It takes you half an hour to drive there. It takes you half an hour to drive back. So now we're at 2 hours. The open house itself, let's just say that's 2 hours. Now you're at 4 hours. Okay. But you got to be there a little bit early to get the house prepped and everything else. So now you're at 4.5 hours. And so let's just round that up to 5 hours. Okay. And let's say you get 3 couples through. I think if you average 3 couples in open house, you'd be doing pretty good. So
Mhm.
3 couples through, you have 3 conversations in 5 hours. Okay. That's 6 every 10. Okay. So you're having 6 conversations every 10 hours for every 10 hours you put in open houses. We've got a 13.2% pickup rate on cold calls. Do you guys track that rate in house at all?
Yes, we do, and we're constantly working to improve it, obviously. But it varies from area to area. But you're saying 13% for your area,
That's your pickup rate. I want
right?
to tell people, if you're thinking, oh, that's how accurate REDX is, no, they're way more accurate than that. That's the
Right.
amount of people that pick up, right?
Sure.
And so, and even our sphere is like
Mhm.
18, 19%. Those are the people that love us and trust us the most. So
Right.
it's not that far off, right? People are busy, they're not watching their phones. So 13.2. So we can get about, with a single dialer, we can get about 70, 80 calls in an hour, right?
Wow.
So over 10 hours, let's just say we get 750 calls in. If we get a 13.2% pickup rate, I'm going to punch this in right now, times 750, you're looking at 99. Let's just say it's 100 calls. I just had 100 conversations in the same amount of time someone doing open houses is going to have 6 conversations. Now, you might say, yeah, but those 6 are better. Well, number one, I'd say a lot of people who go to open houses are tire kickers, right? They're not
Mhm.
as high quality as a lot of other buyers,
Right.
but I would say they are better than a cold call prospect. But still, I've got 100 compared to your 6. And I'll tell you, I remember 13.2 because it's also the amount of years that the average seller stays in their home. So that's
Okay.
roughly 1 out of every 7 years, or I'm sorry, 1 out of every 7 people is going to be doing something that year, right? So
Right.
if I made 100 conversations happen, that means I'm going to get about 13, 14 people who are actually going to do something that year. So now on one hand, when I cold call for 10 hours, I got 13, 14 opportunities, people who are going to make it happen this year. Or I can do the open houses and I've got 6. And I don't know that all 6 of those are going to make it happen this year. So
Right.
when you look at the ROI you're getting on your time invested, I know I just nerded out on all this, but so many people I see in these forums, they're doing anything they can to get away from. I'm going to pick on cold calls right now. I don't think it's the cold calls, it's the rejection and the awkwardness that they feel,
Mhm.
right? The
Mhm.
guys, we're in the business of constantly having to put ourselves in those challenging positions to be able to start the conversation. And if you don't do
Mhm.
it, it's going to be a challenging road for you. And if you do, it's going to be great. So knowing all those numbers can help you make, like I just walked you through, should I do open houses or should I cold call? If you don't know your numbers, you're going to do whatever feels best. If you
Mhm.
know your numbers and you're a business person, you're going to do the thing that makes you the most per hour. So there's a great example. It took me 3 minutes to walk through, showing you how knowing your numbers can help you.
Absolutely. And I'm curious, Joe. You're explaining all these numbers to me. You've got it dialed in, right? You just broke it down. I'm sure you do this math in your head all the time. You
All the
pulled out a
time.
calculator once. That's great. But let's say I'm a brand new agent, right? I don't even know what
Love it.
baseline to use. How long did it take you to figure out and hone in on those numbers? And how patient should an agent be before they get discouraged, right? Because for the first few weeks, months, maybe even for the first year of
Yeah.
cold calling, who knows how long it's going to take? Um, you probably know, but how long before you think someone can really pick apart the numbers, hone in, and say 1 hour of calling is worth this much money to me, or this many contacts, or this many deals to me,
Yep.
right?
Beautiful. So you've got, and this isn't 100% true, but we'll just say you've got 2 different types of leads. You've got now leads and you've got later leads, right? Because if
Mm-hmm.
you're having those 99 conversations every 10 hours, you've got, let's say, 13, 14 people who are going to do something this year. I don't think a lot of agents, especially new agents, hungry agents, poor agents, are going to say that those are all now leads. I would say out of those 13 or 14, you're going to have about 1 or 2 that are doing something in the next 30 days, right? You're going to have about 5 or 6 that are doing something in the next 3 to 6 months. So for your now leads, you should absolutely be getting, I mean, do that simple math. Let's say you're getting 5 or 6 every 5 hours. So you're getting about 1 an hour that should be doing something. But then the question is, and I would ask that agent, how much follow-up are you doing? And what does your follow-up look like?
Mm-hmm.
And are you doing weekly emails? And do you have cross marketing? And are you using Pixel on Facebook? And are you sending them automations? And do you have AI in your CRM? And there's so many different levels of things that you can do. But the more you stay in touch with that person, the higher the odds are that you're going to be the agent that they actually work with when the time comes to make that decision, right? Remember too, I'm telling you, out of 99 conversations, 13 or 14 of them are going to pull the trigger this year.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them don't know it yet. Some of them are about to get divorced and they haven't found that out yet. Some of them are going to have a spouse die. They don't know it yet. Some of them are going to have a job change, a job loss, a medical issue, whatever it is, but it's 6 months, 9 months down the road. So yeah, they're going to do something this year, but when you call them, you're going to get rejected. It's okay. Follow up with them, build a relationship, build the rapport, lead with value instead of trying to sell something. They're going to feel that, and then get them on some sort of drip campaign, weekly email. I'll share with you. I mean, I'm getting a little off topic here, but just to tell you some of the things that we do when I make a cold call. So first of all, when we get our cold call list and we put it into our CRM, the first thing that we're doing is what's called a market update. So I live in Bedford Park here in Port St. Lucie. I love this area. It's about 400. Well, it's literally 442 houses. And the first thing I did when I punched in Bedford Park was I can do a market update that every 2 weeks emails all 442 people, and it gives them a report that's automated. I don't have to do any work once I set it up. And it shows them in Bedford Park, and in their email, it says Bedford Park market update. So it doesn't have the same feeling as the 34987 zip code market update. That feels a little like you bought a list and you just started emailing me, right?
Yeah.
The Bedford Park market update sounds like somehow we know each other. I don't remember how, but I like that you're telling me about all the solds, cancels, expireds, and actives in my community. Right. So now they're able to watch that. Now, even if they don't open it every single time, they're seeing it come every 2 weeks. So when they do something in 7 years, they look at your name in that heading and they think that guy equals consistency, right? Because you built that over time. So I can do that in like 30 seconds and it's on all leads. How? Because I work with REDX, man. And REDX gives you all those emails, which you guys just updated that. I don't know how many years ago it was, but that wasn't something that you were doing 5-10 years ago. Were you guys?
No, you're right. We added the emails. I think you're referring to our GeoLeads Plus. I mean, we added them to all of our Plus products: Expireds Plus, FSBOs Plus, GeoLeads Plus. They come with emails. So to your point, Joe, and I love this strategy, right? Because I think a lot of people get scared of cold calling because they think that cold calling is the beginning and the end, right? They say, "Oh, I didn't connect. I got rejected. I'm going to hang up and I'm never going to communicate with that person or reach out to that person again." It's all about that follow-up, right? The relationship is the goal. Even though they might not know you're building a relationship with them, you're building it in their mind because you're showing up in their inbox every 2 weeks.
Exactly. Yep.
A second point here that I love, Joe, is that you know exactly how many houses are in your area. You said 442, right? I think not enough agents are doing that, right? Whether it's the street you live on or the MLS you work in, it might be too big of an area to know exactly how many houses, but pick a street, right? Pick a street, pick a sub community, pick a subdivision, whatever it is, and say, for us here in Utah, we're on a grid system, right? So I could go to my childhood home and say, update for 1800 North, whatever, update for North Mapleton, update for whatever, and that makes it feel more personal. And then knowing how many houses are there, I think is a great number. Speaking of numbers and tracking them, to know. So that's amazing. For an agent, let's say I'm trying to determine, I'm doing cold calls. Maybe I have access to the emails, maybe I don't. How do I determine when and who to follow up with over email, over a drip campaign? Is it only the people I've talked to? Is it anyone in that area I can get an email address for? Like, what's the balance? Because obviously you don't want to get marked as spam through your email a bunch and get your email shut down. Maybe you are more interested in working the warmer or hotter leads. You're not really into cold emailing. Whatever your strategy is, when and who should people follow up with, and how do they determine that?
Yeah. So I'm going to break this down into two different areas, right? Automations and manual work. With automations, like I said, those 442 leads that come in, whatever REDX gives me for email addresses, all of them are getting a Bedford Park market update, 100% of them. Because I know, and your concern was, well, you don't want to email these people, and now you get put on the naughty list because your unsubscribe rate is so high.
Right.
True, but with that, it's so valuable. We don't get a lot of unsubscribes. So that's very valuable, right? And then we slowly will move those people over to our constant contact weekly email that we do as well. If you guys want to see that, YouTube Joe Rosen weekly email. I will literally show you how I make it. And if you send constant contact and email and you put me on there, you can ask for my template and they'll just move my template right to your account. So that now you don't have to recreate the wheel. You just, take my big ugly mug out and put your beautiful face in there. All of a sudden, boom, 15 minutes later, you've got exactly what I've got. And it didn't take you 3 hours to build. It took you 15 minutes. So
that's beautiful.
So those are the automations. I will do that with 100% of the leads because that 10, 15 minutes of effort one time serves me for the rest of my career. Right. But then as far as manual labor is considered, and this changes over time. The newer the agent you are, the more people you're going to follow up with that are, let's put them on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being hot, 1 being cold. You're going to follow up with your 3s, 4s, and 5s when you're a newer agent because you don't have as many 7s, 8s, 9s, and 10s, right? So I tell my new agents, listen, follow up with anybody who shows any sign of life until you get so busy that you can't, and then you got to slowly wean them off, right? But once you get to the point where you've got a ton of hot and warm leads, now I'm going to move those, let's say 2s, 3s, and 4s over to the automated side. And I'm going to start only focusing my time on the hotter leads. So what's a hotter lead in the realm of cold calling look like? Anything other than a no to me is a pretty decent lead. So if I call up and I say, Andrew, hey, this is Joe Rosen. I'm a local agent here in Bedford Park. I'm calling because we just listed a home 2 blocks down from you for $439,900. Just want to see if there's anything I can do to help you. No, I don't think you can help us with anything right now, Joe. Great. Well, I tell you, I heard that hesitation there. I've hesitated a lot too. And when I do, there's usually something I'm thinking about that makes me hesitate. Can I ask you, what is it that made you hesitate? And now you can start to have that conversation that'll open up we've got kids right now and they're 16 and 18. One's leaving the nest this year. The other one will be leaving in 2 years. So, in 2 years, we're probably going to want to downsize, but for right now, we're good. Andrew, that makes complete sense to me, man. I'm in a similar situation. Mine are a little bit younger. They're 10 and 7, but I'm probably going to be in the same boat in about 11 years. So let me ask you, in a couple of years, would you mind if I just gave you a jingle and saw where you're at and how we could help you then? Literally everyone, because it's 2 years out, is going to say, yes, that's no problem. Yeah. Great. Well, let me ask you, what's a good email for you? And if you word it that way, I assumed it. I didn't say, would it be possible to get your email? I said, great. What's a good email for you? Like, I'm assuming you just told me it'd be okay. Yeah. Now you're going to give me an email, and REDX kicks so much butt, I don't even have to enter it. All I got to do is confirm that REDX has accurate information. If they don't, I swap it out. If they do, great. I do nothing. And I say, awesome. Now, when I put them in my CRM, I've got an action plan. And that action plan is going to tell me to market to them, right? I'm doing that market update every 2 weeks. I'm doing my weekly email every week. And then I'm going to have something that tells me to reach out. I'm probably not going to wait 2 years. In a year, I'm going to reach out to them. And I'm going to say, Andrew, what's going on, man? Who's this? Oh, I'm sorry. This is Joe Rosen. I was a realtor. I spoke with you about a year ago. You shared with me that you were going to sell maybe, probably a year now because your kids are getting a little bit older. I'm calling because I found the most interesting article about our area. I live just a few blocks away from you, and it talks about why our prices are so much stronger than a lot of the other areas in South Florida. I wanted to ask your permission if it'd be all right if I sent that article over to you. Now, I don't even care what they say. I'm just trying to continue building that rapport and that connection so that when I call them in 8, 9, 10 months, when it's time to sell, we've already got 2, 3, 4 conversations in and we've built that rapport, right? So I always tell my guys, try not to call and follow up because it sounds like you're trying to sell a house and make a commission. When you call with the intent to add value or find a solution for a problem that they previously stated, right?
Mm.
So I think if you're calling with an article to discuss local prices and why they're hotter than other areas, that's super interesting to me. Yes, send that over, right? So that's a lot of what we're doing with those.
Okay. And it sounds like a lot of those, like you kind of mentioned a couple times, are cold leads, right? Geo leads,
Yep.
circle prospecting, maybe even the biggest bucket of people you attempt to contact, but maybe the lowest ROI to a certain extent, or maybe more later business than now business compared
Yep.
to other lead types. Could you comment on maybe some of the now business lead types, right? Transaction ready homeowners like expireds, for sell by owners. I don't know if you work with renters or investors or landlords. Could you comment on some of the now business people and maybe how this same approach or a similar approach may be adjusted to that? Because I know a lot of agents out there, especially new ones, probably don't do this super cold strategy, right? You know, I mean, it's smart. They should for a lot of later business, but they want some now business, right? They're calling expireds. They're calling for sell by owners. What are some strategies for them?
Sure. You'll get people who you'll say, hey, there was a home listed, blah, blah, blah. Is there anything I can do to help you? And they'll say, well, we're actually thinking about selling here in about 2-3 weeks. We just got back from Spain and we went for X reason. And we knew when we came back, we were going to start making this decision. So, man, it's really coincidental you called. You know, I don't know what our next step is. Well, Jane, I'll tell you, I've been in that position before personally, and we didn't necessarily know either. This is before I was a realtor. We had a wonderful family friend. They weren't at that time, but they grew into a family friend, reach out to us just like I'm reaching out to you. And they said, hey, I would start with numbers. Let me come over and for free, I'll tell you what your home is worth. And from there, you can make good, educated decisions. How does that sound? And I said, absolutely. And so they came over, gave me the numbers. Once I knew the numbers, it was all downhill from there. It was super easy, right? So I guess I give you the same recommendation. Would it be okay if I stopped over sometime tomorrow, maybe about 3-4 o'clock? It'll take me 30 minutes and I'll get you some numbers. And you get that all the time. I'll tell you though, man, you guys got to practice this stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, hammer the phones. You don't need to be perfect to be on the phones and you'll still be successful, right? That matters. But you've got to start improving your skills. Like this stuff just flows out of me now. And I remember watching the guys who it flowed out of before thinking, man, they're smooth. They're not smooth. They practiced it. They sucked for so long.
Yeah.
And you just fumble. And there are things, if I haven't handled them, I'll fumble, right? But then as soon as I fumble, I'll jot it down before I go to the next call. And then later in the day, I'll maybe set aside 20-30 minutes to practice that over and over and over and over. So when it comes up, boom, it flows out of me.
Yeah. And what I love about, I mean, I'm not going to call them scripts because you're right. It is just flowing out of you. It's almost just like a conversation that you're so used to having that you're just having a conversation. But what I love about the way you've phrased a few of these now, Joe, is that a lot of people complain when they get telemarketer calls or cold calls or whatever, that you get sales breath, right? You know that someone's trying to sell you something and that is kind of received as a little gross or a little bit uncomfortable, whatever. What I love about how you're kind of framing and how eloquent you are with this is that you're their friend, right? You're making recommendations. You're putting yourself in their shoes. I loved how you said, oh, I was in the same situation a couple years ago. And you know what? This is what worked for me. Maybe I'd recommend that. And they go, oh, I'm talking to a real estate agent. They're recommending, oh yeah, okay, come on over. You know, it's not forcing the appointment. It's not shoving anything down their throat. You're not trying to sell them. You're just trying to help people out, which is something I've noticed about you, Joe, from the start. You're always just trying to help people out and make solid recommendations. And I think that those are some important takeaways for anyone watching today or anyone listening to go back and revisit that conversation you just had. And practice that, right? It was very informal. It was very helpful. It was very friendly, right?
And you just made a huge point, man. Your intent is so important. And you got to know a lot of people hop into this because they're hungry, because they're poor, because they're desperate, whatever it is. So they call REDX and they say, oh my gosh, I need your leads. And as soon as they hop on the phones, the thought is, and I know it because I can hear it in their questioning when they're asking me about how successful REDX is. They're concerned with how many closings they're going to get and how many dollars they're going to make.
Yes.
And I get it. I understand we're running a business. I got to make money. You got to make money. We all got to make money. But if you can work on your mind to change your intent, even if it's not 100, if you can get there 80% of the way, where your intent is truly, hey, I'd love the listing, I'd love you as a buyer, but I really just want to make sure I help you. How can I help you? How can I add value to you? How can I educate you? You're going to see that the amount of money you're making goes up, right? I was just talking, we had a listing boot camp today with my team at my house, and I was going over the difference between pointed questions and what I like to start a comment with, which is, talk to me about X. So instead of saying, hey, Joe, your commission's kind of high, we were thinking about maybe going with a 4% commission. Instead of saying, well, if you'd like somebody who's a little bit less valuable, doesn't offer as much, maybe you'd want someone with 4%. I offer a little bit more value. Is working with an agent with a little bit more value something that you want to do? You could ask that, but that feels a little awkward, a little weird. But instead, I might say, talk to me a little bit about why it is you want that lower commission. Is it just the simple numbers of, hey, the fees come down, or is there more to it? And if you start with that, it just makes it such a softer, more palatable conversation. And they open up more. And it's not you versus them. It's you trying, and their perception of you are perceived as trying to help them and understand them. Well, it's the same on a cold call. If they feel like you're trying to jam something down their throat and sell them, good luck. Right. But if they feel like you're truly there to help them, it's a whole different deal. And if you noticed when I said on the Bedford call, hey, this is Joe Rosen, I'm a local agent here at Bedford Park, I'm not going to say what brokerage I'm with, because a lot of them will respond with, you're with who? What company? And right. I don't want you getting caught up in all that, because it doesn't matter what company I'm with, right? I want to say I'm a local realtor, and I want to somehow connect me to you. So I'm going to say, I live here in Bedford Park. I focus on Magnolia Lakes. I have a listing in the Estates, whatever it is. So now we've got a little bit of rapport built, right? I've shown some sort of connection between you and me, but really you're just trying to soften the conversation and build great relationships.
Right. And I'm looking at my list of questions that I had lined up to ask you today, and you're answering one of them for me right now, which is, what is one cold call worth to your bank account? That's the wrong way to frame that question. That was the wrong way for me to want to ask that question, because what it should be is, what is one cold call worth to your sphere of relationships, your sphere of influence, maybe your people account, right? And I think that if more agents went into it with that mindset, and I know, like you said, it's hard, right? Because they're trying to close deals and get paid, right? It's a business. They're trying to run a business. But I think if more agents went into it, not only with the mentality, but the heart of building relationships and just having conversations to make friends, and understanding that leads to their ultimate goal, which is closing deals, that leads to a lifetime of business, right? So anyway, we are running low on time, Joe. Time has flown by. It always does with you. That's what I love about having you on. Any last thoughts, any final advice for our audience today?
Two things. Number one, I want to answer that question direct, although I liked your answer better. A call for us in our market with our average commissions and our average price point and our skill level, which gets our conversion rate, is $15.53. But
a single cold call every time you dial.
Yeah, right? Regardless. They could tell me to go screw myself. They could not pick up. I don't care. Every dial is $15, right? So if you know that's powerful, because now you can own your success. You don't care if you get 0 pickups or you get told to screw off. You know, on average, that's what you need to make X amount of dollars, right? So you can start to do the math. But, the second thing I would say is quit overthinking it. Your whole focus should really be 2 things every day, and everything else is I guess a third priority, right? Because you get 2 things. Number one, prospect your ass off. And prospecting, I'm kind of blending in follow-up. So when you're a brand new agent, you got no follow-up because you got no leads. On day 2, maybe you got to follow up with 1 or 2 people, but it's mostly prospecting. The more you get into this business, the more follow-up you're going to have, which is an awesome problem, because now you're having conversations with people that you've got warmer relationships with, right? So your business structure will change over time, but you've got to prospect, you got to follow up. And the second thing is improving your skills, right? For me, that's training. You've got to get into training. I think role play is huge. I don't know how you can become a successful cold caller without doing role playing and being around people who are consistently better than you and sharing those different things that they say and the objection overcoming and all that. If they don't share that with you, I don't know how you can expect your numbers to get any better, right? So you've got to prospect and follow up, and you've got to work on your skills. If you do those two things, whatever else you do, cool. I guarantee you're going to be successful if you can just hammer down those two things with probably 2/3 of your day.
Amazing. Amazing. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, tomes of knowledge coming from Joe Rosen. Joe, thank you so much. Thank you for those final words. That's awesome. To everyone who is watching, if you want to revisit this episode, and I highly recommend you do, because there were scripts and strategies and mindset stuff. I mean, there always is with Joe. Please review this episode, like and subscribe. Go check us out. If you want to listen to it, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, anywhere you like to listen. And please go check out the past episodes that we've done with Joe. Joe, I'm going to do that. I'm going to go back and see all, create the Bible of Joe Rosen.
The Bible.
The Bible of
That's
Joe
awesome.
Rosen real estate advice, because there's so much of it out there. I think this is like the 7th or 8th episode we've done with you, because it's always so valuable. So thank you, Joe. Thank you to our audience for joining us. We will be back here next Thursday, same time, same place. We'll see you then. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Andrew.